весны 2017 года полномочия и функции по подготовке предложений по выработке государственной политики и нормативно-правовому регулированию системы закупок перешли в Министерство финансов Российской Федерации. За короткий период времени в сфере контрактной системы была проделана колоссальная работа по упрощению закупочных процедур и оптимизации системы закупок в Российской Федерации. Сегодня мы говорим о мире закупок до и после локдауна. Именно с теми, кто помогал выстоять и не побоялся действовать и предлагать решения в то время, когда весь мир замер в ожидании и неопределенности. А именно, с директором Департамента бюджетной политики в сфере контрактной системы. С весны 2017 года полномочия и функции по подготовке предложений по выработке государственной политики и нормативно-правовому регулированию системы закупок перешли в Министерство финансов Российской Федерации. За короткий период времени в сфере контрактной системы была проделана колоссальная работа по упрощению закупочных процедур и оптимизации системы закупок в Российской Федерации. Сегодня мы говорим о мире закупок до и после локдауна. Именно с теми, кто помогал выстоять и не побоялся действовать и предлагать решения в то время, когда весь мир замер в ожидании и неопределенности. А именно, с директором Департамента бюджетной политики в сфере контрактной системы Министерства финансов Российской Федерации Татьяной Павловной Демидовой. Здравствуйте.
Добрый день.
Татьяна Павловна, скажите, пожалуйста, какие сложности возникали в период локдауна с точки зрения правовой сферы и какие решения, как удалось это решить?
Безусловно, законодательство в сфере закупок, как и любая другая сфера, была у нас не готова к наступлению такой непредвиденной ситуации и требовала экстренного принятия мер. Частично, безусловно, более мягкую, более комфортную реакцию законодательства на происходящие экономические процессы повлияла принятый год назад изменения в рамках 44-го закона, которые сократили срок размещения информации о планируемой закупке в плане графика с 10 до 1 рабочего дня, что позволило в сфере произошедших смен приоритетов по направлению закупки, по целям, по задачам, быстро переориентировать свою плановую закупочную деятельность. Но этого было недостаточно. Если вспомнить, что происходило весной этого года, то, безусловно, весной этого года у нас начались с неожиданных нерабочих дней. Такой формулировка «нерабочие дни» не предусматривалась в рамках 44-го закона и требовала также быстрой реакции законодательной, потому как нерабочие дни достаточно длительный срок у нас проходили. И подвисали вопросы как с проведением процедур, так у нас возникали вопросы непосредственно с исполнением контракта, что же делать, в какие сроки, что делать комиссиям, которые уже начали рассматривать соответствующие заявки, поступившие на закупки. В связи с чем правительством Российской Федерации очень оперативно было принято постановление, устанавливающее особенности осуществления соответствующих закупок на соответствующий период. Было предусмотрено возможность исчислять сроки не только в рабочих днях, но и в новых нерабочих днях. Появилась возможность проводить рассмотрение заявок комиссионно в дистанционном режиме, что требовало, безусловно, с целью соблюдения мер профилактики по недопущению распространения коронавирусной инфекции. И позволило еще оперативно проводить процедуры и приносить сроки проводимых аукционов операторов электронной площадки, так и электронных конкурсов. Данные меры, безусловно, на тот период были достаточны, позволили быстро, оперативно, соответственно, осуществить переориентирование, соответственно, по закупочным процедурам и, соответственно, завершить начатые процедуры. Но все не так просто, как кажется, потому что кроме тех процедур, которые находились в активном режиме, у нас еще есть процедуры, которые потребовали принятия экстренных мер, потому что необходимость возникла в приобретении тех товаров, той продукции, которая, несмотря на то, что не возникла в настоящее время или на момент принятия решения чрезвычайной ситуации, но мы, скажем так, были на грани, и нужно было как раз принять меры для того, чтобы не допустить возникновения такой вот чрезвычайной ситуации. Что сделал законодатель? Правительство Российской Федерации достаточно оперативно и быстро был подготовлен комплексный законопроект, впоследствии который был принят и получил свой номер 98 ФЗ. Можно сказать, чрезвычайный закон о чрезвычайных ситуациях. Это очень большой комплексный законопроект, затрагивающий несколько законов, И, безусловно, затронул он положение нашего 44-го закона о контрактной системе, который также позволил оперативно изменить правовое регулирование закупок товаров, работ, услуг для целей ликвидации, предотвращения чрезвычайных ситуаций. Если в предыдущей редакции для того, чтобы осуществить закупки с целью ликвидации ЧС, необходимо провести было предотбор, провести такие, как, скажем так, спецзапрос котировок для этой цели, сформировать пул, соответственно, потенциальных участников. При наступлении чрезвычайной ситуации нужно было запрашивать соответствующую информацию у компании, в том числе ценовую, кто что по какой цене мог, соответственно, приобрести. И только после этого осуществлять закупочную процедуру, что, безусловно, в целях ликвидации и тем более недопущения чрезвычайной ситуации требовало значительных временных потерь и, как следствие, могло привести уже к достаточно плачевным ситуации. И каждый день, если кто-то наблюдал, я думаю, что большая часть народа, конечно, наблюдала ежедневно мониторинг данных показателей по количеству выявленных случаев заражений, каждый день был на счету. Поэтому законодательно данная процедура предотбора была законодательно исключена и предоставлена возможность заказчикам оперативно в рамках пункта 9 части 1 статьи 93 Федерального закона самостоятельно заключать контракты на закупку товаров, работ, услуг, как для, еще раз обращу внимание, не только ликвидации ЧС, но и для предупреждения чрезвычайной ситуации, для предупреждения аварии и для оказания гуманитарной помощи. Тем самым, соответственно, процедура закупки для экстренных случаев значительно упростилась, ускорилась и позволила заказчикам на фоне уже имеющихся поправок в части планирования также оперативно уже осуществить закупку тех товаров, работ, услуг, которые требовались в первую очередь с целью применения и использования, соответственно, средств индивидуальной защиты. Кроме этого, законодатель также не мог оставить без внимания случаи, связанные с тем, что во время локдауна у нас была приостановка сроков исполнения контракта. С чем это было связано? Потому что было ограничение по ряду регионов передвижения и рабочих вообще дней, возможность выполнять, соответственно, работы, оказывать услуги, поставлять товары. И данным же законом 98 было предусмотрено право сторон по соглашению сторон продлевать условия исполнения контракта
prolongate agreements and contracts for the term necessary in order to perform all the obligations that were stipulated in the contract. So, in a gist, that is the set of measures that was implemented. After that, we've seen another law adopted, FZ 124. It also related to purchases, and the overall set of measures that was implemented by the government and by the State Duma included financial measures and, of course, that influenced the financial situation. Considering the difficult financial circumstances of companies, was taken into consideration, and it was allowed for the companies to provide a smaller collateral. It was established at the level of 10%, not 30%. There was also provided a possibility to set the amount of collateral. It could be done by the contractor. The right of the client under this situation, they could run a simplified procedure. The decrease of the financial burden provided us an opportunity to perform under such drastic circumstances and nevertheless realize its main functions. Thank you very much. Tatyana, how do you assess the measures implemented? Do you think that the public purchase system performed well under the circumstances of COVID? Well, certainly. statistics is stubborn. I think figures talk, say a lot in this case. Our organization analyzed all the figures and evaluated the situation, forming the report on our performance. Right now, we are finalizing the reports, and we've collected information from the executive bodies, from the regulators. We collect a lot of information from the Treasury. And even though we see a small decrease of the procedures that are run in terms of tenders, even though we see the decrease in number of purchases that are effectuated, we nevertheless see the growth in terms of the participants taking part in tenders. So I think that simplification of our procedures actually boosted the development of the state purchase system. Losing the share of its market and the need to implement the simplified procedure actually influenced very well on the state purchase market, because it allows the companies to use this opportunity and to obtain public purchase contracts, obtaining in this case a stable financial source. The state bodies, at the same time, they actually had to perform all the other functions that they had, and they had to, at the same time, combat with the consequences of the pandemic. They had their targets, their goals, and among these targets and goals were purchase procedures that had to be performed. In general, we may state that these procedures and their implementation was successful. The budget that was planned for was implemented. As the measures that had to be taken were taken, the procedures were run. The Ministry of Finance was to form their new plans. Could you please share with us what are these plans? Well, of course, the Ministry of Finance had to take emergency measures, and these measures had to be immediate. But at the same time, back in 2017, the Ministry of Finance took a decision to reform the state purchase system. We had a whole section of our budget that was allocated to reform the system of state purchasing. According to the decree passed by our government, the Ministry of Finance prepared a set of draft laws. These draft laws were dedicated to the optimization, and they covered the whole range of purchase procedures. All these procedures had to be switched to the digital format. That's what we did. And while doing that, we saw that the global reformatting has to be performed. In terms of our global project, the main target is to perform the automation of all the purchase procedures. Automation, and switching to digital format proved to be very effective in the situation of the pandemic, and that allowed us to reduce the negative consequences of the pandemic. Considering the measures that were taken this year, the optimization project is, we can state, a big project on optimization. We've automated the process of forming the contract. The interaction between the parties is automated, and all that allows us to monitor and trace money movement. It also provides for preventive measures against crimes and violations of financial rules. Exhaustive procedures are being removed, and we've removed those procedures that are either being not useful or are being exhaustive. We reduce the number of these procedures, we simplify the overall purchase procedure, and all that results in better satisfaction of state clients and state customers. We also see the overall changes in the state purchase industry, and that calls for change in the legislation that is supporting these processes. We need to provide the necessary legislation for the purchase procedures. All the draft laws are published on the website of the Ministry of Finance of the Russian Federation, and throughout this year we were agreeing these draft laws with all the interested bodies. I can assure you that the scale of this work is unprecedented. We have been running the reconciliation procedures with 30 state bodies. We are sure that 2021 will see the adoption of this law, and during this year we will switch to the automized, simplified and optimized mode of public purchasing procedures. In fact, we are going to issue an instruction, a guide of performing automized actions. The client should be, the interface has to be client-friendly, and it should facilitate a quick switch to new simplified rules. So I think that adoption of this draft law will result in the overall procedure becoming more attractive to the participants, and it will also help us to run all these procedures with fewer violations and fewer errors. As I've already said, the financial burden of these mechanisms is significant. We see that more and more financial tools are becoming available for small businesses. We are trying to decrease the financial burden for these actors. As to big projects, I think that in this context, this draft law will be interesting because the guarantees that will be issued by Comparative will become available for players. So I think that this new draft law is very interesting. It will be very useful, and throughout the year we will have time to study the draft law, and we will have time to organize the soft and smooth switch to the new set of procedures. Okay, thank you very much. We'll be waiting for these amendments being adopted and this law being adopted. Thank you very much.
В этом году исполняется 7 лет, как вступил в силу 44-й.
Yeah, will mark the 7th anniversary of the contract system law. It provides for the unified integration.
Является системой анализа и контроля достоверности данных в сферах 44-го и 220-го
This system helps us to provide for the operation of the public purchase systems. Our system is one of the biggest in the world from the point of view of the code that has been developed for this system, and this system is now supervised by the Federal Treasury. Right now we are going to talk to Anna Katamadze, deputy of the head of the Federal Treasury. What do you think about the year that ran to an end? Was it a good one? Anna. This year hasn't been an easy one for us, just as for everyone. We are running a lot of procedures, and of course the functionality and the operation of the system depends on people. We, same as everyone else, switched to working remotely, at least partially, and now drawing a line under the results of this year. We can say that we have implemented almost all the plans that we had. Could you please share with us the results? Yes. We had several sets of tasks, legal tasks, technological tasks, and organizational tasks. As to legal and law drafting tasks, we are taking part in drafting new laws that concern public purchases. We are taking part in this process every year. We closely collaborated with the Ministry of Finance. We tried to help them out. So a number of ideas that were developed jointly by the Ministry of Finance and the State Treasury made it to the new draft law. As to the work that we performed throughout the current year, we have integrated our procedures to the center of data processing. We are processing several million transactions. We are processing a lot of inquiries and entries. We are working with huge volumes, several terabytes. We need to analyze and store all the volumes of all the data. It was not an easy task to organize the migration of the old database to the new platform. We had to prepare this transition for 18 months, and in August we performed this transition. That was one of the most difficult projects for the Federal Treasury. Today, approximately 270,000 users downloaded the application of our service. And as a result, we made it to top 50 applications in our country. We see that the users are actively using the application and we are fine-tuning it continuously. We think that, in general, one of our strategic directions of work is switching to signing documents in the electronic format. In order to do that, we need to act jointly together with the regulators on information security. This year we worked on several draft laws as well. Namely, we worked on Law 44 on switching from auctions to tenders. This procedure, the new procedure, differs a lot from the old one. In general, it reminds a regular tender, but the procedure that is being implemented is simplified. We provide for mechanisms that help us to avoid participants being penalized for the mistakes and errors they make. Even though we act in the situation of the pandemic, even though many time limits were not complied with, we nevertheless see that the competition and the number of parties competing within tenders grow. It means that all the efforts that were made by us, by the Ministry of Finance, by the Federal Antitrust Service, they were not in vain. The participants become more and more numerous, and it means that they trust the system and they trust that we will be treating them as a regular party to an agreement or a contract. This year we have switched purchasing medical drugs and medicines to the system that would be using the unified all-Russia register for medical drugs. The register includes various medicines, various medical drugs and products, and it helps us to make the procedures that we are using run smoother. It also helps us to analyze better the prices for similar medical drugs, and it helps us to control prices, to see whether prices are too high or too low. It means that the managerial decisions are being made in a more optimal and more fair way. It helps us to fine-tune the pricing system. Last year, we have also implemented a set of measures that are supposed to optimize the public purchase system. This year, we have formed the set of financial obligations that are stipulated in the contract. Financial obligations are actually obligations to pay. We have now introduced the part that makes a link from the contract obligations to the electronic documents, and it allows us to in fact switch to automatic payments in terms of public purchase contracts. That's what we plan to do in the future, but it is only implementable provided we perform all the preparatory work in advance. We use analytical data. We are using the tools for purchasing Russian goods, and in order to do that, we first had to adjust legislation. So we first need to create the information that we will be further controlling. Right. Thank you very much for your answers. You have indeed performed a lot of work, but what are we going to see in 2021? Response. In 2021, what we'll see is, first of all, switching to using new procedures. They will be simpler, they will be more optimized. Next, we will implement the procedure for e-shop purchases, e-commerce purchases, and I think it will become a very good alternative to real purchases because it simplifies the procedure, and in this case the customer can purchase the goods right from the virtual shelf. We still need to fine-tune these procedures, but I think it has a great potential. We are trying to cover all the parts of the agreements. Termination of the agreements, changing of terms of the agreements, and so on. All the contracts will be available in the electronic format, and paper versions will remain in the past. It is the first time that we see that the law is trying to regulate all the processes of performing the contract. So we are going to completely switch from using paper documents to the electronic format. Now, electronic claims, all these procedures will also go to the e-format, and this new system will be able to perform all the necessary actions and checks electronically, and only if the examination of the situation gives the positive results, the decision will be made. We are also taking into consideration the usability and other important aspects. We want this format to be user-friendly for the customers, for the users. We are introducing the measures of additional control to avoid errors and mistakes on the part of the participants and users. Thank you very much. Anna, I know that apart from public purchases, you have new powers that you received this year. Indeed, the Federal Treasury received new powers from the government this year. We are going to manage the operations related to seized and confiscated property. We are working together with the Ministry of Finance, the Antitrust Service, and the Federal Treasury, and us, the Federal Treasury. All together, we are working on unified electronic procedures. We plan to boost the development of this system. We are going to act in a similar way to what we do in terms of public purchases. We want to manage properly municipal and federal property. All these goals will be implemented already in 2021. Thank you very much. Congratulations on that, and we'll wait for more results to come.
Система закупок Российской
The
Федерации
system of public purchase
уровнях власти.
in the Russian Federation is used by all the bodies of the executive power, from the bottom level to the top level. 16 years ago, there was adopted a law on placing public purchase orders. Then the contract system law was passed. The antitrust service controls the rectification of violations of these laws. Today we are going to talk to the deputy head of the Federal Antimonopoly Service of the Russian Federation, Mikhail Evraev. Mikhail, we know that right now you have 100% switched to the e-format of processing claims. How has it changed your work? And has it? Well, of course it has. Even 1 year ago, we already started implementing the electronic format, so people didn't have to come over from the Far East, from the Urals, to Moscow for claims above 1 billion rubles. So when the pandemic broke out, we were actually ready to switch into e-format because we already tested it. So we switched all the federal departments and we switched to these new procedures ourselves. It saves a lot, it saves time, effort and money. Everything goes quicker. But if people still want to visit us in person, we can order passes and it is still possible. But these cases are very rare. Everyone wants to do everything remotely. Are you receiving now more claims on services, goods and supplies? Well, in fact, the number of claims on Law 124 and 44, the number of claims remains the same, but the quality of claims is different. The situation was changed by COVID pandemic. And indeed, the situation called for quick measures and their immediate implementation. A lot of claims were related to medical services. But sometimes people were sending claims, and those were about building roads or other processes that had no relation to COVID. We had to look at all these claims and we had to use the register of confirmed suppliers. So we had to see to every case. There were many cases when people tried to use the situation of COVID as an excuse of not performing their obligations under the contract. Mikhail, we have executive bodies of the Russian Federation constituents. How do you organize your cooperation? Well, when we are trying to come up with unified rules, we are trying to unify these rules and procedures for everyone, not only for our service. So we meet with the regional bodies on a regular basis. We are using video conferencing systems, and we are not only meeting the executive power bodies, we are also meeting the suppliers, those who perform services under public purchase contracts. And these meetings, they actually are very informative both to us and to people who work in the regions. I think today we have established quite good cooperation. We are working as one team. We are not dividing us to regulators and other participants. We are all working to make this one big system productive and highly performant. It means that we all need to act professionally and according to law. That's what we are trying to do. Thank you. Mikhail, I know that it's been several months or maybe even years that you are working on building the unified law enforcement practice for your authority. When are we going to see the results? Well, in fact, we already have the first results. This year, the Federal Antimonopoly Service have provided 20 explanations on the enforcement practices. We have dedicated a whole section of our website to these questions. So right now we have stopped. Right now we are not receiving so many letters and claims any longer. So these explanations indeed were very effective. We provided explanations as to what is the difference between the used goods and the provided goods, the supplied goods, because these goods, they have different set of characteristics. We answered the questions on the Act of the Government number 99 and many others. We tried to set out clear criteria that could help people to have a more clear vision of the situation. The first direction of our work is explaining the implementation of resolutions and measures taking, and the second direction of work is implementing the unified and integrated procedures. Sometimes, indeed, we see that bizarre decisions are being taken, but we are looking at every single situation and we are trying to come up with response measures. So I can say that we are very much satisfied with our work. As to the second strand of our work, which is related to unifying the legal base. Well, here we're very satisfied with the results as well. It is important to have a clear and optimized set of rules. We are coming up with a new package of rules, and I think that all the changes will be for the better. For example, we are going to get rid of the number of cycles in placing the order. The client had to run through several cycles to place the order. We are now going to have one cycle. Then we are going to use the e-auction system. We are going to reduce the time of this electronic auction from 19 hours to 4 hours. We need to take preventive measures to avoid illegal actions, and I think that this measure is one of them. Then we introduced the pre-qualification measures for companies that take part in tenders. If the company hasn't performed under a contract of 200 million values, it will not be able to send claims against the decisions of the clients. Right now we see that the situation has not reached a perfect balance, and we want to make the situation fairer. We hope that as a result of all these actions we will have a rating of companies. We already have made decisions and have taken the decisions to change these laws, and the law number 44 will be changed accordingly. All that will be reflected in the quality of contracts, in the number of contracts, and the companies will be acquiring an additional business asset, which is their reputation. These companies with these assets will have preferences. The companies that will have a high rating of business reputation will need smaller collateral, so we'll try to incentivize people to work in a fair way. We are working with our colleagues from the Ministry of Finance and the Federal Treasury, and I'm sure that we will achieve great results. Thank you very much. And on our side, thanks to your work, thanks to your novelties, we're sure to come up with new programs, because we'll have to raise awareness among everyone. We need to tell all our citizens what will be the rules and procedures that will be used in 2021. Thank you very much for your work, and we wish you all the best in 2021. Thank you.
Сложившейся традиции ровно год назад
1 year ago, just as always, we were discussing the development of purchases, the relevant legislation, and the legal base that public purchases will be using in 2021. Today, we are talking to Olga Belyaeva.
Скажите, пожалуйста, занимаясь законоподготовительной работой, как вы оцениваете
Olga Alexandrovna, good afternoon. Working on laws, what is your assessment of the measures that were adopted? Elena, I think that the measures taken are adequate to the situation. In 2021, we have seen a phenomenon that is unprecedented in the recent history. This pandemic called for increased preparedness. We never lived through such a situation, but at the same time, it is impossible to put on pause the view of the public on the situation, so we had to transform very quickly. It's interesting that right now the executive power bodies are talking about force majeures. We even have a letter that I'm mentioning this. This letter was signed by the Anti-Monopoly Service and the Emercom. Yes, Elena. As to this letter, as to the position of the federal executive bodies and the regional executive bodies, well, indeed, we've seen a lot of criticism. On one hand, an executive body cannot turn a circumstance into force majeure. Indeed, some circumstances are unprecedented and we don't have any control over it. But public purchases cannot be reduced to the process of purchasing per se. There is a lot of preparation work. And here the position of the executive bodies will define the result of disputes. Olga, why wasn't it enough to switch the purchasing procedure to a different type of procedures? Well, we have to take into consideration all the stakeholders of the agreements. We reintroduce penalties and other measures. It makes the purchase agreements more stable and it helps us to avoid many risks. I hope that this process of adapting to this new unprecedented situation will help us to develop our public system, public legislation towards a more optimal system. Okay, thank you. What lies ahead in 2021? Well, it is not a secret there now. We are waiting for the second optimization amendments package. It will be adopted soon. And there is nothing very new there. We are going to fine-tune the system using these amendments. We are going to fine-tune the process of enforcing existing laws. So it is another stage of adapting our legislation, adjusting it to the situation, but not because of the pandemic, but because of new practices that are in place. Thank you. It's been more than 7 years that the contract law in Russian Federation is in place. We have established the process of e-commerce, and it covers almost all the industries. Today we have interviews and we talk about the world of purchases before and after lockdown. Today we are going to talk to Vladimir Lishenkov. What differences do you observe on the RTS-Tender platform? Well, we know that the pandemic impacted all the industries and all the sectors. However, probably the public purchase industry was one of the most prepared sectors. I can cite the figures that are representative for our platform, and we can try and make conclusion on the basis of those. From the beginning of the last year, we haven't observed any decrease of activity. We see growth only. Public purchases are one of the drivers of the economy. The number of suppliers that are engaged in the sector grows. We can save time discussing, for example, Law 44 is one of the most popular subjects for discussion. Purchases depend a lot on the region where they are performed, the far north and other regions. Then we see a great spike of growth in activity that is regulated by Law 124. Maybe this year we will see the areas covered by these two laws being merged, but so far they are quite different. Last year we had a legal act that introduced new measures for the clients. Right now, we know that the tool allowing purchasing smaller volumes is being used increasingly. It is used in many industries, and in terms of statistics, I can say that comparing to 2019, small volume purchases grew by 60% comparing to 2019. And in terms of money, we see the growth by 50%. Why is this tool becoming more and more interesting? It provides transparency, and businesses like it. Now, some more figures. 72% of participants that perform those small volume purchases are the businesses that never used neither Law 44 nor Law 124. This procedure allows them to perform these purchases. I think that explains for this growth. We see a trend for simplifying the legal basis for purchases. We see the trend for switching to digital format. So the contracts are being switched to the digital format, and it is very important for businesses. It increases the trust on the side of the businesses to the state, to public bodies. And in case the supplier performs according to their obligations, the new contract guarantees the payment better. Another trend that we've observed last year is the increased demand for educational events and educational services. The number of events being held grew 4 times. These events are being organized for specific clients, for specific industries like construction or food supplying. In any way, we observe significant development, and it is interesting that we are not seeing the old players go. We only see the new players coming in. Working with the suppliers we've seen another positive result. For example, we, as a platform, on the regular basis, we hold in regions the events where we offer them our support in terms of preparing documents and in terms of other services and products. What are those services? One of them is smart search on contracts. Our services allow the suppliers to perform more effective searches through documents, looking into the subject of their search more specifically. Another key service that is in demand are financial tools. We were offering bank guarantees, and today factoring is growing in terms of demand. It's a good way to increase turnover in terms of implementing the contracts. But in general, we can state that the demand for financing is growing. Another thing that is it's important to note, in terms of working with the suppliers, apart from positive factors, there is a number of negative consequences. For example, there are suppliers that are disrupting the work of the whole system. Sometimes we see that happening. There are suppliers that also act as clients. And for these situations, we try and investigate every case, and we try and ban the activity of fraud, because that's what it is. Right now, we also perform property purchases and property sales. The work that we've performed in the past, it has laid a solid foundation for our work in the future. These platforms are key to the development of the whole industry. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll leave and we'll see what 2021 has in store for us. We'll see how the platform will perform under the circumstances dictated by the system of public purchases. Thank you.
Продолжая экспертную дискуссию о мире закупок до и после локдауна, которая проходит в формате интервью с различными экспертами и участниками, у нас появилась возможность поговорить о том, как связаны закупочные процессы и инвестиционная деятельность.
We would like to discuss the link between investments and purchases. We will talk to Oleg Melnikov, the Executive Vice President of Gazprombank. Good afternoon, Oleg. What control instruments does a bank have? Well, one of them is the bank contract, and that allows to control a public contract or an investment project. We perform the follow-up, and it is initiated by the parties purchasing under this contract. Banking follow-up system was initiated by state bodies, and it was first used for public purchase
получил свое
contracts.
развитие в федеральном
It
законе о
uses
гособоронзаказе, где
several
банк сопровождения
federal
применяется
laws,
очень широко
including
как межведомственная
those
система
on
контроля.
the
И этот инструмент оказался очень интересен для
defense
корпоративных клиентов, для
public
крупных компаний и корпораций, которые заинтересованы
purchases.
в контроле за целевым использованием
And
средств. А современные
this
технологии
format is now being
и
used by the parties
развитие
that are interested in
банковской
controlling
среды
and
позволило перевести
organizing the
этот
follow-up
инструмент
for
в
public
цифровой
purchase
режим и сегодня
contracts.
показывает
New
в режиме
technologies allow
онлайн,
us
как реализуется
to
контракт, который
perform all
передан
these
в банк на
procedures
банковское
in
сопровождение.
the
Спасибо
digital
большое, очень
format.
интересно. Скажите, пожалуйста,
Thank you very much.
тот продукт,
It all
который
sounds very
о
interesting.
котором вы рассказали, есть
The
оценка на
product that
международном уровне?
you
Да,
talked
есть,
about,
и причем она очень
do you have an
позитивная, даже
opinion of
неожиданно для нас самих.
international
Мы думали,
experts
что
on
это
that?
сугубо российская практика,
Yes, of
но
course.
выяснилось, что эта
I
технология,
first
этот инструмент очень
myself
интересен
thought that
и
it's a
российским
purely
компаниям
Russian
сначала,
product, but
реализующим
it is
проекты на
not.
территории других
In
государств.
fact,
Ну и
it helps a lot Russian
банкам-партнерам в
companies
этих
that are
государствах
implementing
тоже он оказался
projects
интересен,
on
и
the
они тоже
territory of
хотят
other
и
states,
заинтересованы в его
and
применении. У нас
foreign
есть,
agents
появились
acting on the
в
Russian
прошлом году
territory
и
are
получил свое
also
развитие проекты
using
в
this
Беларуси, в Болгарии,
project and
Сербии, на
product.
подходе у нас Азербайджан и Узбекистан.
We worked
И мы
already with
задумались о создании
Belarus,
межбанковской
Bulgaria,
платформы, которая
Serbia,
позволяет проконтролировать целевое
Azerbaijan,
использование
and
средств на
Uzbekistan.
проектах, реализуемых и на территории других государств. И она
So we are
сегодня работает,
using
эта технология, и
this
позволяет
tool
осуществить
on the
банкосопровождение
territories of other
любого проекта на
states,
территории любого государства с
and it
поправкой
is
на
actually implementable
законодательство страны,
on a
где
territory
реализуется
of
проект.
any state,
На ваш взгляд, в
provided
чем
the
преимущество данной
legislation
интеграции?
of this country allows for
Поможет ли
that.
это закупочному процессу?
What do you think is the
Поможет, ведь закупочный
benefit
процесс не
of
заканчивается на
this
заключении контракта.
process? Well, of
Самое главное,
course,
как
there are
контракт
lots
будет
of
исполнен, и
benefits,
здесь как раз
because the public purchase
абсолютно имеет
agreement is not
быть банковское
terminated
сопровождение, потому что
after the
это как
purchase
раз
is
инструмент,
effectuated.
позволяющий
It is
закупщику
important to provide for
проследить, как реализуется
bank follow-up.
контракт, который он заключил.
It
Банк сопровождения начинается
allows
с конкурсной
the
документации,
purchaser
из проекта
to
договора,
follow up the
заканчивается
project.
после
The
того,
work
как контракт
starts
исполнен.
with
Причем
the
важно,
tender
это
stage
контракт на
and it
поставку
ends
материально-технических ресурсов
with
или на работу и услуги. Банк сопровождения сегодня
completion
работает и
of the
там,
contract.
и позволяет заказчику
All
и
these measures,
закупщику
they
прежде
allow
всего
both
оценить
to the client
ход
and
реализации
to the
контракта в режиме
purchaser
онлайн, влияя на его
to
реализацию с помощью
assess the
банковских
implementation of the
технологий.
contract
Олег Васильевич,
in
банковское сопровождение достаточно
real-time
интересный
mode
инструмент.
online.
Есть куда развиваться. Какие у вас
Oleg,
планы?
bank follow-up
Планов
is a
у нас
very
очень
interesting
много.
tool.
Планов у
There
нас
is a lot of room for
дорабатывать
improvement.
существующие
What are your
сервисы,
plans?
создавать новые. В
Well, we plan
частности, внутри
to fine-tune
банкосопровождения
existing
в прошлом
services
году
and
пока
come
в
up with
пилотном режиме,
new
а в
ones.
ближайшее время в промышленной эксплуатации
We have already
появится
run
сервис риски бизнеса, который позволяет
pilot
отследить внутри
projects,
цепочки соисполнителей
and these projects help us to assess
оценить их
business
финансовое состояние
risks.
в процессе
It
реализации контракта,
allows us to assess
посчитать рейтинг
the
участников реализации
financial
контракта.
performance
Внутри
on the
банкосопровождения у нас уже
contracts.
работает
It
отчеты
allows us
динамики цены,
to
который показывает стоимость позиции в момент натуре поставки на ключе
give
победителя конкурса
ratings
на поставку,
to the
включая
clients
всех
and to those
посредников
acting
до
on the
производителя.
purchase,
У
public
нас
purchase contracts,
работает и
and it
развивается
allows us
интерактивная
to
отчетность,
trace
как раз
all the
наш
links of the
онлайн-инструмент,
chain
который
from
показывает заказчику,
the
что
producer
происходит с каждым
through all the
рублем,
intermediaries
спущенным
till
в
the
реализацию контракта.
end party.
У нас эта интерактивная
We can
отчетность будет
trace the
дорабатываться. У нас
implementation
появится
of the
мобильное
contract.
приложение по банковскому
We also
сопровождению.
came up
У нас мы
with
работаем
the
над созданием
mobile application allowing for bank
с
follow-up
сервисами электронной торговой площадки для того,
and
чтобы
bank
деньгам,
monitoring.
которые мы умеем хорошо показывать нашим заказчикам,
We
появилась физика,
try to
появились
integrate
условия
this system
договорной конструкции, появилась
with our
библиотека и весь набор
electronic
аналитики,
trade
который связан с
platform,
реализацией
because we
контракта.
want
Спасибо
to
большое.
have
И
all the
все-таки
analytical
банковское
tools that
сопровождение при
are
интегрировании
related
в
to
закупочный процесс.
performing the
Какие
contract.
имеет положительные стороны?
Okay, thank
Их
you. What are
много.
the benefits of
Во-первых, это
this
контроль за
tool
целевым
for
использованием
public
средств.
purchase? Well,
Во-вторых,
there are lots of benefits. First of all, you control
обеспечение
the money you
прозрачности
spend.
движения
Secondly,
денежных
you
средств по всем уровням кооперации в
provide
рамках
for
реализации контракта.
transparency, and
Это
you see
управление
all the money
производственной
movement
цепочкой
in terms
контракта
of
и
performing
бюджета.
under the contract. You
Это
control the whole
оптимизация ценообразования
production chain
внутри
and implementation of the budget.
соисполнителей контракта.
You
Это
also
оптимизация
control
авансовой
all the
политики. Это дополнительное
performers under the contract. It's an additional tool that guarantees that the money will be paid to the actual executor of the works, and in general this tool allows us to provide for implementation of the contract. Thank you very much, and I cannot but ask about the bank guarantee. It is another effective tool in the contract system. From your point of view, from the point of view of the bank, what are the positive and negative sides of it? Well, the banking guarantee covers the risk of non-payment of the advance payment, and it provides for the guarantee period after the completion of works under the contract. However, today we see that the bank guarantee is not easily obtainable, and very often it is not easy to get money under the guarantee. It means that our corporate customers and our public clients, they require and they ask for bank follow-up in addition to bank guarantee. Thanks to bank follow-up, we provide for the targeted use of every ruble under the contract. We have the cases already when we see that overheads and costs on both sides the client and the contractor were reduced. I know that for more than 3 years, Gazprombank platform was accredited among 9 public platforms. This year hasn't been an easy one. From the point of view of fine-tuning your platform, did you have to perform much of it, much of fine-tuning? No, not at all. This electronic platform, it works independently, it works even without people, so the operations were running before lockdown, throughout the lockdown, and after the lockdown, and they will be running on and on. We closely cooperate with the regions. We work on developing the services that we already have. We run webinars, and before that we were running a lot of conferences to raise awareness on public purchases and bank services. This year, even in the situation of the lockdown, we have launched a project on digital model that combines logistics, purchase solutions, and bank follow-up. So that, and in this way we create an ecosystem that a client can use in order to tailor the purchase contract to their needs. Oleg, thank you very much. I think whether we want it or not, we are in for a big project that we are going to do jointly. We have a platform, you have practical experience, so I think that in 2021 we can think together about a new educational program. Thank you very much.